everyone. This video is going to be all about report cards. They did come home in the folders today, and they were also sent or posted via Skyward. So take a look. Even if your child wasn't here today, they'll be on Skyward or that paper copy. So you'll see the report card, and then you'll see the ESGI information that'll have like correct, incorrect. But please keep in mind that we did start these assessments a few weeks ago. So there's some things that you might think, wow, like my kiddo can do this. But you can still reach out during conferences and explain that to me. But most likely there might have been there could have been a little bit of growth between then and now, which is great if that's the case. But because we have 25 kiddos and 2 adults, we have to start early, and then we pace ourselves, especially when we have the possibility of students going on e-learning. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the goals for this quarter. The goal was to count to 60 by 1s and 60 by 10s. If your child was able to do that or higher, up to 100, then they got a 3. Also, sorry, I got stamp all over me. If it was above 100 for either one, that would be a 4. So if you notice that they have a 2 or a 1, that means they did not quite yet meet that expectation for counting to 60 without mistakes. So when we're doing any of the assessments, we aren't able to help them because this is what they just know fluently, what they've mastered. So counting to tell number of objects, for the most part we were all kind of in the same place. Most kiddos were able to count objects, so it's like on a piece of paper, like a worksheet style, crossing out counting, writing the corresponding number. So if they were able to get 8 through 10 correct out of 10, that was a 3. And then you kind of notice the 2, the 1, that the trickle down from that. Writing numbers, the goal this quarter was 0 through 10. So if you notice they have a 2 or a 1, that means they were not able to write between 9 or 11 correctly. And it is counting that 0, recognizing numbers. Most kiddos, I feel, are pretty on target with that. If you notice your kiddo is not, that means that out of 0 through 10, they if they didn't get a 3, that means that they got less than 9 correct. Comparing groups greater than, less than, and equal, this was very strong for us. We had a lot of above expectations, and that means that they were able to get all 4 of the questions correct, and that includes the 4th one is the bonus, adding with objects. If you notice, they got a 4, which is difficult to do because we just started addition. That means they didn't need the objects. They were able to just kind of mental math, which is above the expectation. So tracking and following, that's making sure that it's a one-to-one. So if it's I can swim, are they, like with those 3 words when they're pointing, is it I can swim really fast and they're still pointing and reading but there's no words? That's tracking and following. So if they're on point with I can swim and it's consistent through the rest of the sentences and pages, that means that they have those one-to-one correspondence skills. Alphabet ID, so there's no way that the kiddos could get 4 on this because there's only 26 letters. So there's no way to exceed grade level expectations. The expectation right now for quarter 2 was between 21 and 26 letters. So if your child is a 2 or a 1, that means that they got less than 21 numbers that they were able to ID. That means if I showed them the letter A, they were able to say A. And then that goes the same with the sounds. So if they were able to produce the sound and they said, oh, that's A, apple, A. Or if they just said A, that's correct. If you're noticing that they are a 2 or a 1, that means they were between knowing 16 and 20 correct for the 2 and 15 and below for the 1. And this just kind of gives you an idea of like where they need, how much progress do they need to make to be at that 3. Word wall words, the grade level expectation for last quarter was between 18 and 23. And sight words and word wall words are the same as sight words. So important for reading, so important for first grade. So if your child is below, that's something, you can implement practice with every day. And a really easy example is when the kiddos go to their lockers today, I had like just flashcards, and before that they could go out or come in, what's this word? And if they didn't know, I would spell it and say it. Okay, your turn. And then when they come back, different word or same word if they needed more practice. So kind of going over beginning and ending sounds was tricky for us. So if it was the word duck, uck, what do you hear first in duck? So they should have been, the expectation is that they would have been able to say D because we hear D first. Now if the word is frog, what do you hear last? So what's the ending sound? Frog. And the answer is G because that's the final sound, the ending sound. So I'm noticing ending sounds was hard for a lot of kiddos because we were still kind of making our way through beginning sounds, starting to make that transition. Beginning sounds is still difficult for some, so we're, really implementing that more and more, writing words as they sound. So there will be a picture and it's given orally, so it would be pig, pig. Write the sounds you hear. So they get a point for each sound. So in the word pig, g. If they wrote all three, that's, that whole word is counted correct, a point for each. But if they were only able to do the beginning sound, middle sound, so that's how it is. That's how it's looked at. So a way to practice that is to have any CVC words, they can tap it out. So if I gave them the word cap, app, C, A, P, P, cap. And we call that tapping. They can also do it with their arm. Drawing to tell a story. So I am noticing some kiddos are working on using those real colors. So if you're drawing a tree, using tree colors. Adding those details. Narrative. Now, for narrative, that's their ability to tell a story with their drawings, their labels, and then if they're able to add sentences. So I noticed when looking over some of our pieces, some kiddos weren't consistently adding those labels even with reminders. So you might see if sometimes they did it or it wasn't always consistent, it might be a 2. Now if they weren't able to give a verbal story at all and it was maybe more of a scribble, that would be a 1. So writing alphabet letters, reversals are not counted as errors, but at this point I'm really trying to help them make sure and check that their letters are not backwards. So at this point, I'm really, making sure that they are self-correcting. But the expectation was for last quarter is that between 42 and 52 of the letters are written correctly. With that being said, the curriculum we're working on has just introduced uppercase letters, and this assessment includes uppercase letters. So, however, uppercase letters are easier for most kiddos. So even if they weren't explicitly taught, some of them had that prior knowledge. So if you're noticing they had a 2 or a 1, that means they were below 42 written with correct letter formation. Now, for the first time, but it won't be the last time because we'll continue on from this point to do independent reading levels. So the goal for this quarter was level A. If they're at 8A, then you'll notice they're not yet at the expectation. I will be making a video going over what the leveled readers look like, how it progresses, what the expectation is, and going forward, what will your child be expected to do. Writing names. So a 3 is that their first name is pretty much written perfect at this point, and then a 4 would be first name and last name perfect. So if you're noticing 2 or 1, they might have some formation difficulty still or a letter backwards. I'm really starting to look for that that mastery of their first name. So I did cover everything as far as like the rubric, but there are behavioral aspects in the report card. So let's see if I've got it here. I've got it right here. Perfect. Taking responsibility. So a 3, what that looks like, and this, you will have a copy of this, but just to kind of go over it, uses adequate responsibility, organization, organized materials, asks for help to prioritize, and this can be difficult as a kindergartner, but at this point, most of the class is starting to get those organizational skills, because now we have, especially with the tables, we have our own pencil bag and it's on our chair, so it's a very structured situation when it comes to materials. Respect, the expectation to get a 3 for respect is generally gets along with others, can be helpful and productive member of the group, can usually find an appropriate way to handle conflicts, rarely gets into disagreements, and seeks to help resolve conflict. So if you're noticing a 1 or a 2, that just might mean that at this point they're still learning that interaction with others, and maybe how to take directions, how to contribute, how to voice, the things that they want to say in a respectful way. And at times, kindergartners might say something and it's out of impulse, so that does happen from time to time, but we'll talk more about your child's specifics at conferences, so make sure you sign up for a time slot. Otherwise, I'll be reaching out to you. Active listening, to get a 3, frequently listens to directions, raises hands, uses eye contact, and is rarely off topic when called on. Choices in conduct, usually follows classroom rules, rarely engages in disruptive behaviors, follows school and classroom procedures most of the time, and willing to accept consequences for behavior. So we're still working on active listening and choices in conduct. So you might see a 2, and if there's a 2 or a 1, then you can just know at this point that conversations and maybe practicing at home with what does active listening look like. And if you're interested in a social story, I'll send one home. And that's just, kind of like choices in conduct would be, not running around the classroom, making sure that during a sitting time, we're sitting, making sure we're not crawling around the classroom, not yelling out, throwing things, things like that. And then trying / effort and grit. So a 3 for that is giving forth good effort, avoiding distractions, completing assignments, and persisting in tasks, even if, you can become frustrated. So I know I gave you a lot of information. I just didn't want anyone to freak out, because there are more criteria on this report card than the other one, because we've been learning more. We've been going further, and you'll see that with every quarter that, there will be a higher expectation. So if you see 2s, take that as, okay, this is something that they need a little push on to get more confident, to show more mastery with, to be more consistent with. Now, a 1 means that it is very hard at this point for them. So it might mean that they're just not understanding that. They're not able to produce, like that ability. Now, they might have some idea, but since it does go by like the percentages and everything that I broke down for you, that's like an everyday skill. That's something that you should practice every day, even if it's for a small amount of time. And an example I would give you is sight words. So a way that you can implement what I was sharing with you about sight words is, all right, it's time for dessert. Okay, before we get dessert out, here, read this word. Okay, we're done with dessert, but we're getting ready for bedtime. All right, read this word. And like just a 1 word, but if you know it's something that they need practice with, it could be in the car, it could be with siblings. I know that children can get very fatigued after being at school all day and then going home and doing, a bunch of paper pencil stuff. The newsletter that I had shared a while back is always changing. I'm always adding games, so if they love being on their Chromebook, that's a great way to kind of increase some of their abilities with skills. And I did send that form, that pre-conference form, where you can request materials. So after looking at your child's report card, and if you haven't filled out the conference form, go ahead and choose what materials you need, because I want to help you bridge the gap that your child might be experiencing right now, but it does not mean that they are way behind or anything like that. If there's maybe quite a few ones and twos, then we'll be talking about, support, next steps, things like that. If there's some twos, then you just kind of know these are what we need to focus on. You can still work on those areas with threes, but maybe you don't have to do it as frequently as the things that for twos or ones. So let me know if you have any questions. I know that this is probably the longest video I've ever made, so I understand if it was hard to get through the whole thing, but I wanted it to be there for the ones, the parents that really kind of needed more explanation. And I will see you guys all again next week. I thought I had something else, but you'll see a paper book that went home today. Please put this in your child's book baggie. So just like Henry's mom shared those sight word books, these are also usually contain sight words. So when we get those home to you, those are great to keep. I know that we've not been as consistent with them, but we will be trying to get back in the rhythm because the kiddos really seem to enjoy them. So have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.